Welcome back to the Crypto Intellect, your home for the latest XRP news, crypto market updates, and the biggest stories shaping digital assets right now. Today we're diving into a question that seems to be on every XRP holder's mind. Is XRP finally getting ready to break out? There are a lot of signals flashing across the market, and while nobody has a crystal ball, there are definitely some developments that deserve attention. We'll talk about XRP's current price action, why a major support zone continues to hold strong, how global events could impact risk assets, what's happening with crypto legislation, and why some investors believe a breakout could arrive sooner than many expect. If you've been feeling frustrated by the slow movement in XRP lately, you're not alone. The past several weeks have tested the patience of even the most committed holders. But as we've seen many times in crypto history, periods of boredom and low excitement often come right before major volatility. Whether that volatility ends up being bullish or bearish remains to be seen, but there are certainly signs that the market is approaching an important decision point. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's break down everything happening right now in the world of XRP. At the time of this update, XRP continues trading near a critical range that has become one of the most important technical zones on the chart. What stands out is how many times XRP has returned to this area and found buyers willing to step in. Every market has levels that become psychological battlegrounds, and for XRP, this support region has repeatedly demonstrated resilience. Traders have watched XRP test this area multiple times, only to see price rebound again and again. That doesn't automatically mean a breakout is guaranteed, but it does tell us that market participants continue defending these levels aggressively. What makes this especially interesting is that despite broader uncertainty across crypto markets, XRP has avoided the kind of collapse some analysts predicted. Instead, it has continued consolidating. Consolidation can be frustrating because it feels like nothing is happening, but experienced traders understand that long periods of compression often precede large directional moves. The more time support holds, the more attention traders begin paying to the possibility that buyers are quietly accumulating positions. Whether that accumulation eventually leads to a major breakout remains uncertain, but the market is definitely sending signals that this level matters. One of the biggest themes affecting crypto lately has been geopolitical uncertainty. Investors everywhere continue watching developments involving the United States and Iran because global tensions have a way of influencing nearly every asset class. When uncertainty rises, markets often become more cautious. Risk assets like cryptocurrencies can experience increased volatility as investors decide whether to seek safety or pursue growth opportunities. We've already seen examples of how geopolitical headlines can trigger rapid reactions across financial markets. Sometimes crypto falls alongside stocks, and other times digital assets demonstrate surprising resilience. That unpredictability is exactly why investors are paying close attention to international developments. If tensions ease, risk appetite could improve significantly, creating a more favorable environment for crypto assets, including XRP. On the other hand, if uncertainty increases, markets may remain hesitant. The important point here is that XRP does not exist in a vacuum. Macroeconomic events, global politics, interest rates, and investor sentiment all play a role in determining where capital flows. As a result, anyone trying to understand XRP's next move should keep one eye on the charts and another on the broader world stage. While global headlines dominate the news cycle, Bitcoin continues to tell an important story of its own. Compared to many altcoins, Bitcoin has shown stronger relative performance in recent months. Part of that strength comes from institutional interest and the growing influence of investment products tied to Bitcoin. As a result, Bitcoin has managed to maintain higher levels even during periods when the broader crypto market struggled. For XRP holders, this matters because Bitcoin dominance remains one of the most important indicators in the industry. Historically, when Bitcoin dominance rises, altcoins often lag behind. When dominance begins falling, capital frequently rotates into alternative cryptocurrencies, creating the conditions for what traders call an altcoin season. Many investors spent months expecting Bitcoin dominance to collapse and trigger a massive altcoin rally, yet that scenario never fully materialized. Instead, Bitcoin remained unusually dominant. The question now is whether that trend is finally approaching a turning point. If Bitcoin dominance begins declining meaningfully, XRP could become one of the beneficiaries as investors seek opportunities beyond Bitcoin itself. Looking back at previous market cycles helps explain why so many analysts remain hopeful despite recent disappointment. During earlier crypto bull markets, particularly in periods of peak excitement, capital flowed aggressively into altcoins. That rotation created explosive gains across the sector. This cycle has been different. Bitcoin has captured a larger share of investor attention, and many altcoins have struggled to replicate the performance seen in previous years. Some market participants view that as a sign of weakness. Others see it as delayed potential. The reality is that market cycles rarely unfold exactly as expected. Investors often spend months anticipating one outcome only to watch an entirely different narrative emerge. XRP supporters argue that the asset's fundamentals continue improving even while price remains relatively subdued. If that perspective proves correct, then current price action could eventually be viewed as a lengthy accumulation phase rather than a sign of permanent stagnation. Nobody knows for certain which interpretation is right, but it's clear that many traders believe the story of this cycle is still being written. Another major factor influencing sentiment is the ongoing discussion surrounding crypto regulation. Few topics generate as much debate as regulatory clarity. Investors want rules because rules create certainty. Businesses want rules because certainty encourages investment. Markets often perform better when participants understand the framework within which they operate. This is why so many people are closely watching legislative developments that could provide clearer guidelines for digital assets. Supporters argue that meaningful legislation could unlock significant institutional participation and create new opportunities throughout the crypto ecosystem. Critics remain skeptical and question how quickly meaningful change can occur. Regardless of which side someone takes, it's difficult to deny that regulatory developments represent one of the most important catalysts on the horizon. If lawmakers move closer to establishing a comprehensive framework, investor confidence could improve substantially. For XRP, which has spent years at the center of regulatory discussions, that possibility carries particular significance. Investor psychology is another fascinating element of the current environment. Recently, many market participants have begun expressing frustration about crypto's lackluster performance compared to stocks. It's easy to understand why. Certain segments of the stock market have delivered impressive returns while many cryptocurrencies have moved sideways. This naturally leads some investors to question whether their capital could be working harder elsewhere. Yet history often shows that markets have a way of testing conviction before major moves occur. When optimism reaches extreme levels, corrections frequently follow. Conversely, when frustration and doubt become widespread, opportunities sometimes emerge. That doesn't mean every struggling asset suddenly rebounds, but sentiment itself can become a powerful contrarian indicator. Many experienced investors pay close attention to moments when confidence appears weakest, because those periods often coincide with attractive risk-reward setups. Whether XRP is currently experiencing one of those moments remains uncertain, but there is no question that sentiment has become significantly more divided than it was during previous periods of excitement. The relationship between stocks and crypto continues generating intense debate. Some analysts argue that if the stock market experiences a correction, cryptocurrencies will inevitably follow. Others point to periods where Bitcoin and certain digital assets demonstrated relative independence. The truth is that correlations can change over time. Markets are dynamic. Conditions that existed 6 months ago may not exist today. There have been instances where stocks struggled while Bitcoin held firm, or even moved higher. There have also been periods when both asset classes moved together. This uncertainty makes forecasting extremely difficult. Investors searching for absolute certainty are unlikely to find it. What they can do is prepare for multiple scenarios. If stocks continue climbing, crypto may eventually benefit from increased investor confidence. If stocks pull back, crypto could experience temporary pressure. Alternatively, crypto could attract capital from investors seeking opportunities outside traditional markets. The future remains unwritten, which is exactly why risk management remains so important. One reason some XRP supporters remain optimistic involves the possibility of a catalyst-driven breakout. Markets often spend extended periods consolidating before a major event suddenly changes the narrative. Sometimes that catalyst comes from regulation. Sometimes it comes from institutional adoption. Sometimes it comes from unexpected partnerships or technological developments. The key point is that major moves frequently require a story that captures investor attention. Right now, many traders are actively searching for that story. They are asking what could finally push XRP out of its current range. Could it be legislation? Could it be broader market momentum? Could it be developments within the Ripple ecosystem? Nobody knows for sure, but investors continue watching closely because the ingredients for a significant move appear to be gradually coming together. Speaking of Ripple, recent developments surrounding the company's business ambitions have generated substantial discussion. Ripple continues expanding its vision beyond simple payments infrastructure. New initiatives involving financial services, brokerage-related capabilities, treasury operations, and institutional solutions suggest that the company is positioning itself for a broader role within the future financial system. Supporters argue that these efforts could strengthen XRP's long-term utility and relevance. Critics caution that adoption takes time and that markets sometimes overestimate the immediate impact of corporate announcements. Both perspectives have merit. However, what cannot be ignored is that Ripple continues building while many competitors struggle to establish meaningful traction. Long-term investors often focus less on daily price movements and more on whether underlying development continues progressing. By that measure, Ripple remains highly active. One of the most talked about stories recently involves Stellar and the dramatic surge in XLM following major infrastructure-related announcements. The market reacted enthusiastically, sending XLM sharply higher in a relatively short period of time. Naturally, this sparked speculation among XRP investors because the two assets have often exhibited similar behavior historically. Whenever XLM experiences a significant move, discussions quickly emerge regarding whether XRP might follow. Chart comparisons reveal periods where both assets displayed remarkably similar patterns. However, similarities do not guarantee identical outcomes. Market capitalization differences, investor bases, liquidity profiles, and ecosystem developments all influence performance. While some traders view XLM's surge as a potential leading indicator for XRP, others caution against drawing overly simplistic conclusions. The relationship is intriguing, but it is not necessarily predictive. What makes the XLM situation particularly interesting is how quickly markets can reprice an asset when investors perceive a meaningful opportunity. Billions of dollars in value can appear almost overnight when sentiment shifts. That reality reminds us how rapidly narratives change within crypto. An asset that seems forgotten one week can suddenly become the center of attention the next. XRP investors understand this phenomenon well because they have witnessed similar cycles before. The challenge is determining whether recent developments represent isolated events or part of a broader trend toward increased adoption of blockchain-based financial infrastructure. If institutional interest continues expanding across multiple networks, then assets connected to real-world financial applications could receive increased attention from investors seeking exposure to that theme. At the same time, it's important to maintain realistic expectations. Not every positive headline translates directly into price appreciation. Markets are influenced by countless variables operating simultaneously. A bullish development can be offset by macroeconomic concerns. Strong fundamentals can be overshadowed by weak sentiment. Positive regulatory news can be delayed by political realities. This complexity explains why experienced investors avoid making absolute predictions. Instead, they focus on probabilities. The probability of an XRP breakout appears higher when support remains intact, regulatory progress continues, institutional participation grows, and market sentiment improves. Conversely, risks remain whenever uncertainty dominates headlines. Understanding both sides of the equation allows investors to make more informed decisions. Another noteworthy development comes from the expanding availability of crypto-related financial products. As trading platforms introduce additional tools, derivatives, and investment options, accessibility continues improving. Increased access often leads to greater participation, and greater participation can contribute to improved liquidity and market efficiency. Of course, advanced products also introduce additional risks. Leverage can amplify gains, but it can amplify losses just as quickly. Nevertheless, the broader trend remains clear. The infrastructure supporting digital assets continues maturing. For XRP and the wider crypto market, this evolution represents an important long-term tailwind. Every step toward mainstream integration potentially expands the pool of participants capable of interacting with digital assets. As we move deeper into the year, attention will increasingly focus on timing. Investors aren't just asking whether XRP can break out, they're asking when. The answer may ultimately depend on a combination of factors rather than a single catalyst. Regulatory developments, institutional adoption, macroeconomic conditions, Bitcoin dominance trends, and broader market sentiment could all play a role. Markets rarely move because of one headline alone. More often, they respond when multiple forces align simultaneously. Right now, several pieces appear to be moving into position. That doesn't guarantee an immediate breakout, but it does explain why speculation is intensifying. Traders recognize that extended consolidation periods eventually end, and many believe XRP is approaching one of those pivotal moments. The most important takeaway is that patience remains essential. Crypto markets have a habit of exhausting investors emotionally before delivering significant moves. We've seen periods of extreme excitement followed by crushing disappointment, and periods of deep pessimism followed by explosive rallies. The current environment feels like one where conviction is being tested. Some investors are losing interest. Others are quietly accumulating. Some are rotating into stocks, while others are positioning for a potential crypto resurgence. Ultimately, every participant must decide which strategy aligns with their own goals and risk tolerance. But if XRP does eventually break out, many people will likely look back at this period and realize the signals were visible all along. Until then, the market continues building pressure, the conversation continues growing louder, and the question remains the same: is XRP about to break out? The coming weeks could provide the answer.